Good afternoon, everyone. We are here for the continuation of 8 stages of psychosocial development according to Erik Erikson, wherein we are going to discuss stage 5, which focus on identity versus role confusion. So first, let us find out who are the person or the child involved during this stage. So, yes, an adolescent. And they are the one who are involved here. So, adolescence refers to the transitional stage of physical and psychological development that generally occur during the stage of puberty to legal adulthood, or a transitional stage between ages 12 to 18 years. And I know that you're already familiar with this since we already discussed it in our previous lessons. Probably you're asking what happened to an adolescent during this stage. So there are important events that happen to an adolescent's life during this stage. And there are 4 events or changes to consider and you needed to know. So first, during this stage, an adolescent might experience a lot of physical and cognitive development. And adolescents are undergoing a lot of physical changes, such as rapid changes on their body shapes and heights, like their legs and arms are getting longer, breast development for girls, and puberty takes place, like there is now the growth of pubic and body hair. So same goes with cognitive development. And adolescents have the ability to think systematically with their higher brain functions. Their reasoning and intellectual capacity becomes more complex. Next is rapid changes and verbal dexterity. So, an adolescents have the ability to put ideas into words accurately and improve the effectiveness of communication. And also, they can think hypothetically and abstractly. The third one is an adolescent is learning to be independent. An adolescent during this stage is trying everything on their own. They are starting not to depend with their parents or with anyone's authority. Quite similar on deciding and making their own choices. For example, they can now stay out until midnight. Or even, they are now responsible for their own homework. And of course, both of them are pushing their limits in order to protect themselves. Since adolescents become independent during this stage, they want more independence and more emotional distance between them and their parents. The relationship may change. Adolescents' focus often shifts to social interactions. Their focus shifts on building up social relationships. They are now seeking for various relationships with friends and others. The amount of happiness and emotional support they can get to external environment. Adolescents also want to become part of the society. They began to fit in it and think of themselves as being part of the society where they belong to. And that is what we called ego identity, pertaining to knowing yourself or knowing who you are and how you fit in a society. For example, before I went to college and enrolled in this course, at first I thought about what do I really wanted to be and what career will I choose. How can I help and contribute in our society? And what role should I play? And then I thought of being a teacher where I can help a lot of students and learners in the next generation, where in this way I can contribute in our society. So that's what ego identity means. So let's proceed to the discussion of the psychological crisis during this stage. Identity versus role confusion. Or the first one is the identity, and then the second one is role confusion. To be discussed by Jancy Maranan and Julie Jonalyn Kate Salas.
Okay, good day. So, let's talk about identity. What is identity? So, it says here that identity, it is a consistent definition of oneself as a unique individual in terms of roles, attitudes, and beliefs and aspiration. On the other hand, when psychologists talks about identity, they are referring to all the beliefs and ideals and values that help and shape and guide a person's behavior. So, to make it more simple, identity is who and what you are. It is how the world see you, and it is how your characteristics define you. Example of identity is your name, and also your gender, and your physical appearance, and the way how you think. So that is identity. And also, it says here that identity provide us with our integrated sense of self, avoiding identity crisis. So, it mentioned here the word identity crisis. So, what do you think identity crisis? When we say identity crisis, it is the feeling of not knowing the real you, or it is the feeling of you are confused about yourself, your identity. And here comes the question, who am I? That's why, according to Erik Erikson, what we are trying to do, or what adolescents are trying to do, they are balancing between selecting a single self versus trying out many possible self. It also includes here figuring out gender identity, and political and ethnicity identity, vocational identity. So, let's begin with balancing between selecting a single self versus trying out many possible self. So, a person or adolescents in this stage is they are asking themselves, or they are wondering, should they become like this or that? Example is, am I going to be an athlete? Am I going to be in a band? Am I going to be a popular? So, there are many questions and possible identities that they are trying. And next, here is figuring out gender identity. So, example of it is a girl, an adolescent girl. She might think, what does it mean to be a woman? What is a woman's role? How she will become a woman, and how being a woman affect the way she thinks. So she is curious about how would she dress, or how would she act as a woman. Same as with a boy. She think, what does it mean to be a man? What is a man role being played? And how does being a man affect the way he thinks? And in political and ethnicity identity, adolescents was also imagining by 18 to 20 years, they have sense of politicality and ethnicity. So they are now engaging with, they are thinking of engaging with political and ethnicity. And also, they are thinking if they should be conservative or liberated. And also, vocational identity. So, when we say vocational identity, they are figuring out what, or they are deciding what career and vocation they will get, or what career you will be, or they will be. Like, should they become a doctor, or a teacher, or a dentist, or an engineer? So When we say vocational identity, it comes the idea of thinking your future or thinking of what you will be in or what your career would be. So, how can we overcome identity crisis or how we can succeed in this stage? Adolescence needs to establish a priorities in life. Example of it is your family, academics, success, and etc. And then they will need to set goals for their selves based on those values. So now let's move on to another topic, which is why identity is important. It says here that identity gives each of us an integrated and cohesive sense of self that endures through our lives, our sense of personal identity. And it is shaped by our experience and interaction with others, and it is this identity that helps guide our actions, beliefs, and behavior as we age. So, bakit nga ba mahalaga yung identity? Kasi mahalaga yung identity kasi mas madali tayong makakapag-decide on our own. We don't need others and no one can break the beliefs that we have. So, although may mga nakaka-influence naman sa atin, pero mas okay pa rin yung may beliefs tayong atin. And hindi tayo basta-basta mai-impluwensyahan. At ang mas maganda dito, tayong makaka-impluwensya sa iba. And also, alam natin kung kanino tayo makakapag-interact or sino yung mga taong dapat nating samahan or yung kinabibilangan natin. Kasi we know our identity at yun yung importance niya.
What is role confusion? Uncertainty about one's place in a society. Role confusion involves the individual not being sure about themselves or their place in society.
So, when we say role confusion, it is the uncertainty about one's place in the society. It involves an individual not being sure about themselves or their place in the society. It is quite similar to the question, who can I be? Or what do I want to do in my life? Or what role I should play in our society? So you're probably questioning yourself. A failure to achieve or establish a sense of identity in adolescent's life within a society can lead to this, what is called role confusion, or uncertainty or not being sure about yourselves and your role in a society. Have you experienced that? Probably yes. And that takes place during stage 5 or during adolescent stage of your life.
Conflict during each stage. Each stage in Erikson's theory builds on the pricing stage and paves the way from the following period of development. In each stage, Erikson believed people experience a conflict that served as a turning point in the development. If people successfully deal with the conflict, then they emerge from the stage with psychological strength that will serve them for the rest of their life. If they fail to deal effectively with these conflicts, they may not develop the initial skills needed for a strong sense of self.
In this stage 5, identity versus role confusion, the fifth psychosocial stage takes place during the often turbulent teenage years. This stage plays an essential role in developing a sense of personal identity which will continue to influence behavior and development for the rest of a person's life. Teen needs to develop a sense of self and personal identity. Success leads to an ability to stay true to yourself, while failure leads to role confusion and a weak of sense of self. These formative years, aged 12 to 18, provide a valuable and in-depth exploration of belief, goals, and values while searching for personal identity and sense of self. During this period, they explore possibilities and begin to form their own identity based upon the outcome of their exploration. Failures to establish a sense of identity within society, and it can lead to role confusion. The transition between childhood and being an adult is crucial. We become increasingly independent and begin to consider our careers, family, friends, and our place in society. One should always attain balance between identity and role confusion. Too much of ego identity leads to fanatism or maladaptation, and too much of role confusion leads to refugiation or malignancy. Success in stage 5 according to Erickson leads to fidelity, alignment with the standard and expectation of the social group of which we belong. After all, our conscious sense of self results from his social interaction and is crucial in our balance between identity and role confusion.